All right, so, well, again, I thank all of you for coming out and, joining me in this session. Hopefully you'll get something good out of this. I would reiterate who I am, but you did such a great job. I'm an instructor at the Susquehanna County Career Technology Center, and this is my 11th year teaching now. And I've been doing the tracking thing and the evaluations for psychomotor for about almost the entire time, at least a good 10 years. Now, that first year was a lot of just getting a feel for things, getting my area organized, getting students used to the direction that I wanted to go in, because you figure they were already there. The teacher had been there for many years. He retired and I took over for him. So there was a bit of a transition that had to happen. But I found that actually having accountability, the students knowing that there was accountability, and the students being able to know where we were going and why we were going there made a huge difference in actually instructing them. It actually got to the point, and it is to the point now, where I'm pretty much just their assistant. I run around in the shop, kind of like the human pinball, bouncing around, helping them here, helping them there, on whatever they're working on. Now, I do general instruction in the classroom with about a 45-minute period of time when all of our sending schools are there, and that's the time when if there's something I want them to know as a group, that's when I go over it. Okay? That's also the time when they usually do their assessments and their worksheets and things like that. Now, I have pretty much everything in my classroom electronic right now. Okay? So we use computers a lot, cut down on the paper. The nice part is the students can get access to it at any time. They can see where they're at, what they have to do, if they have assignments that are due. I use Google Classroom just to kind of give you the broad spectrum. I would like to migrate forward and create a website specifically for my program, so that if for some reason they're having issues getting into Google, which happens once in a while, sometimes Google doesn't like to play well with some of the documents I create, this way they can go to the website and get that. I use videos in a lot of my instruction too. So it's nice for them to be able to go, pull out the information for the next task or project they're going to work on, and they read the instructions, they get the video, they do the worksheet, and then they're out in the shop ready to do what they need to do. And then they pretty much are just coming to me saying, hey, I don't quite get this 100%, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? So that's pretty much my job. I'm their assistant. Okay, so providing accountability through proof of performance. Anybody, does that give you an idea or a picture in your head? I mean, that's pretty broad, providing accountability. So me being the teacher that I am, the first thing I like to do is, let's talk about accountability. So what is accountability? I did a Google search, on accountability, and it blew my mind how many different terminologies came up for accountability. So the one that I kind of broad-based and I thought this presentation the best was the obligation of an individual, okay, we're all individuals, or an organization to account for its activities. So these are the activities of the organization or the individual, right? They accept the responsibility for those activities, and they disclose the results in a transparent manner. So you look at that from a couple different directions, okay? The accountability, it's the obligation. Now, is it the student's obligation to account for what they do? Kind of, right? But isn't it more our obligation as the teacher or the school or the administration to make sure that we are helping that student, right, account for what they do? So, who is accountable? Well, the school, you could say, it's the school's job, right? And then people in the school can turn around and say, no, I think it's the administration, because, they kind of control it. But ultimately, when that student is out in the workplace and there's an issue of their performance, who do you think the employer is going to take them? The teacher, right? The teacher. The student's teacher. They're the one that taught them this, and I don't think that they know what they should know to that level, so they're the ones that are accountable for the instruction that's done. So you have to keep that in mind. That's the accountability. The teacher is accountable for the student's performance after they graduate and get out into the workforce. Okay, so how do we prove the performance? What's the proof? So the proof is evidence, right? Or an argument establishing or helping to establish. Okay, sometimes you can't always just establish, you have to help to establish the fact or the truth of a statement. So if the student says, I can wire that circuit, okay, prove it. Well, I've got a competency list with a date on it. That doesn't prove to me that you can wire that circuit. It shows that you did it once, but it doesn't prove to me that you can wire it. And that's where I'm going with this. Okay, so what is performance? Well, it's the process of carrying out or accomplishing an action, task, or a function. Just like I said, hey, he says he can wire that circuit. Well, So we need proof of performance then. So we put it all together, we get evidence establishing the truth, right, of accomplishing the action or the task or the function. So now we've got to have evidence that establishes that there was something accomplished. Okay, so how are teachers providing proof of performance? This is where I open it up. Do I have any teachers in here? Yeah? How do you provide proof of performance?
One of the things I just started this year is when my students finish a project, they have to take a picture of that. In the picture, then they have to write a summary. And they do not get a grade until they have a picture and a summary. And then in turn, I'm helping them build their portfolio.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Because how many of us could, well, I was going to use this as an example later, but how many of us, say like a culinary teacher, an automotive teacher, you can't put the car or the souffle in the student's portfolio. It just doesn't work that way, right? So how do you prove in those situations that the student had successful performance? So that's where we're going. Okay, so this is basically what I came up with when I merged everything together, how teachers are providing. So what type of evidence are teachers using to establish the truth, right? Because we said there needs to be truth that there are students that are accomplishing or have accomplished an action, task, or function. Okay? So it's the teacher's job to find the truth that's going to prove what the student accomplished. And this is how I've been doing it. No. Really? Do you think this right here, do you guys know what this is? This is the POS, right? How many teachers use the POS to prove that their students accomplished something? Yeah, I did. I did for maybe about 6-8 months, and then I realized that this isn't working. This isn't working. It's a great tool to show that the student is proficient, maybe, right? Isn't that what that says? Proficiency level achieved, right? And I remember just yesterday, I was in a session, and I heard somebody say, this is not supposed to be filled out right before the student graduates with an X. Yeah, they're proficient. Because if they did a task on this sheet 3 years prior, how in the world are you going to remember exactly how proficient they were? Unless you have proof, right? Ah, see, you have proof. This thing's easy to fill out. I submit to you that there's a way to actually fill this out as you go, as the student learns. And that's where I'm going. Okay, so I took what the state gave us, and I tweaked it a little bit. Because my administrator came to me and said, it'd be great if I could show student progress. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've got over 200 competencies on my list. How am I going to show performance? I have almost 200 projects that I do in my shop because I teach building property maintenance, so it's electric, plumbing, heating, carpentry, masonry. It's a whole lot of things my students have to learn. So what I ended up doing was the first time the student completed a task or a project in my shop, which has multiple tasks, I put the date in there. But wait a minute, how would I know how many of those competencies fit into that project? Well, that's something I want you to remember. I'm going to show you that in just a couple more slides. So I basically came up with this to prove that I'm going to have at least 3 dates that it's going to prove the student had progress, okay? And then my proficiency level was a proficiency level. Anybody know proficiency level? Well, up here, if you look, it's hard to see. And I apologize, I didn't do this as a handout because I figured everybody has the POS. But I wasn't thinking the proficiency levels aren't always there. Basic meets the minimum knowledge and comprehension level of the standard only. Proficient, that's what we're all shooting for, right? Because we need proficiency in Nachi. So proficient analyzes new information based on basic set of knowledge, skills, and can apply information to the skills or to the new settings. And advanced means they can synthesize and evaluate. That means they're doing critical thinking on their own, right? We don't have to hold their hand. Information from several sources and solve problems based on their conclusions. Okay, so this little gray column is where I put in what skill level I think they're at. So I may have a student do a project the first time. He did it flawlessly, but he did have to come and ask me some stuff. I did see him talking to his neighbor a few times. So I know he didn't do it all on his own. He did everything great, but he needed some help. So I'm going to give him a good grade because he's going to fill out my assessment, which I'm going to show you completely, and he's going to probably be in the 90s. But does that mean he's advanced just because he got a 90-something? He met all the requirements of the physical test? Not necessarily, right? Because how in the world is he going to be able to synthesize and evaluate all on his own if this is the first time he's ever done something? I mean, typically think about the first time you've ever done something new. You were a little apprehensive probably on how it was going to be completed. Maybe you looked up a YouTube video or asked a neighbor for help or something. So, moving on. The types of evidence. This is where it gets, I think it gets really good. But I'm just a little excited about this kind of stuff. So, evidence for cognitive or mental. How do we show evidence for action, task, function if it's cognitive? We've been doing it since the beginning of time, right? Test. Give a test. Well, now, today, we're giving electronic tests. And most of my tests are. They're electronic, which is great because I can see the information, right? But what does that prove? It proved they could recall some information, right? They were able to either paper, pencil, or computer test, and then we had a standard outcome, like, okay, they scored a 90, so we know that they're proficient, or maybe advanced proficient at this. And we could save that information because it was a piece of paper, or it was a piece of data, and we could use that as proof that that student knew that information at that point in time. How many of us learned something and a month later we can't remember to the level that we originally knew? Right, exactly, it happens. So this is the problem with proving that a student has performance at a specific level at a specific time. I mean, they may, when we test them, we see they're doing great. But if they don't completely retain everything and they don't continue to do it over and over again, what's the old saying? If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So that happens. That happens. Okay, so it's definitely easier to determine the performance with a cognitive test. Okay? Now, what happens when we use psychomotor? So for those of you who maybe not psychomotor, it's hands-on. So we've got to evaluate them in a hands-on situation now. Well, it's not as easy because you can't just pull out a computer and do it, right? So you're usually you as the teacher is looking at what they're doing and you're evaluating them. We're assessing them. But don't we usually need a few tools to do that? I mean, are we really the specialists? Does the student know what we're looking for? I know in a lot of cases, my daughters are all in college now, and they come back and they tell me how they're struggling with something. And I'm like, well, do you have a rubric? And they look at me like, Dad, we're in college. They don't get rubrics. I'm like, wait a minute. You're paying money for this education. And they're not telling you what they expect of you? So this is my big thing that I get stuck on, and it bothers me. Because I see it all the time out there. Teachers of all types don't always tell the student what they're looking for, okay? So, it's a physical evaluation, may have multiple variables. Of course, if it's a hands-on project, there's a big difference between fixing brakes and cooking something or building something, and it's more difficult to determine the performance. Well, this is where the whole development came in, everything that I tried to capture. So it's a physical task, the students using their hands or doing some type of performance. How do we capture that data and keep it so it goes on with them? So I came up with project evaluations. This happens to be my electrical task. You have a copy of it in your handout. I think it's the next sheet behind all of the PowerPoints. So, like I said before, I teach a lot of different things, a lot of different areas. So I just created a generic, I would say, task evaluation sheet for electrical. Okay? And I started out with brief description. You know, if they're doing a task, they ought to have a brief description of what the task is. Well, you'll see later in a couple slides, I give an information sheet, and all the data that I require on this eval is actually on that information sheet. So it makes it easy. But you know what it does? It forces them to read directions. And all of us men have problems reading directions. But in the industry, if you build something and you don't read the directions, you're usually going to be in for some trouble. So I make sure the student's name is on there, the task number, the date they started, the date they finished, and the time. Why is that important? When they started, when they finished, and how much time they perceive they used. When you get out in the real world, don't you have to fill out an invoice maybe, bill a customer, let your boss know how long you were on site, that kind of stuff? It makes a big difference. So this draw cable layout diagram, if you go to the second piece of paper that I gave you, it's actually an instruction sheet of the task. Oh, my lie, I have a plumbing one I threw in there because I'm not, maybe somebody else will plumbing. So put one more, you'll see it looks like cable diagram, there it is. That's actually the instruction sheet that my students, one of them, will pull out, and that's how they learn what they're going to do. I'm not running around going, oh yeah, you gotta do this, and you gotta do that, and you gotta do something. No. You guys are getting ready for the real world. You gotta learn to do things on your own. Okay, so there's a tracking sheet, which I'll show you. They find out where they're supposed to be, they know what they're gonna do, they go back to the filing cabinet, or they go online, they pull this information down, and then they grab an evaluation sheet and they fill it out. They start filling it out before they even go in the shop. Because I want them to know what they're gonna do and what they're gonna need to do. Because if someone calls them up on the phone when they're at my program and goes, hey, I got a light switch that's going bad, are they gonna just drive over without anything working? No, they mentally have to think, okay, I might need a switch, I might need a box, I might need some wiring, I have to have some things with me. Otherwise, when I get there, I look at it, I gotta turn around and go pick up everything and come back. It's all about time management. So I start early, like this. Okay, so lower on the eval is where I take it from the psychomotor and I move it back into the cognitive. Because I want the students to know what they did or what they're about to do. I always tell my students, I want you to give me a complete description from the power source to the load, and I want you to use it in industry terms. And they look at me and like, well, wow. You can just look at the cable diagram and know that. I said, well, what if I don't have a cable diagram? What if I call you up and I say, hey, can you tell me how to wire this? I want you to be able to verbally tell me from start to finish everything I need and what has to be done. So now, when you have to think about something, doesn't it help you remember it? I know visual learners, you see it, you just do it. But if you have to really think about it step by step, it helps you to remember it. And that was why I put this in there. The rest of it down here is just the screws they use, the connectors, that kind of thing. And then again, I make them right. They hate me for this. But you know what, by the time they get out of my program, I've had so many students come back and say, Mr. Reinhardt, thank you for making me right. Because I have to do it out in the real world. And a lot of students hate to write. They love to tap on that doggone device and their hands off. But they don't like writing. So here it is. I want a complete explanation, industry terms, at least 3 sentences of what you learned. How many of them give me what they did? You do it all the time. I hate it. I get mad at them. I'll give it back to them and say, that's what you did. I want to know what you learned. I already know what you had to do in order to create that project and make that light bulb turn on, but I want to know what you learned by doing it. So after a while, they get in the hang of things and they do it. And then down here I say, okay, what would you do differently next time? Because typically, if it was the first time you did it, you probably messed something up. And I want to know what you would do differently. Like, what did you learn and what would you do differently? So after doing all of that, basically, the students have a good idea. And I mean, this part down here is pretty much after the test is done. But by filling all that out, they have a good idea. They've recalled everything they've done, and it moves them forward into the next section, the rubric. Now, when they go out in the shop, after doing a couple of tasks, they learn real quick what I'm looking for. Okay? And when we're in our time in the classroom, I'm telling them about this code and that code. You can't mount the box this high. You can't do the right. There's certain codes and requirements that you have to follow. But when they get out in the shop, do they remember every code that the National Electrical Code is going to require them? No, they're not going to remember every one. So on the back of the task evaluation sheet is this rubric. So while they're out in the shop working, they can look at that rubric and they can say, oh yeah, that's right. When I'm putting a wire nut on, I have to make sure that there's no bare conductors sticking out. They forgot about that. Yeah, because I can see the little bit of bare wire sticking out. Mr. Reinhardt's going to take 2 points off of that. Because the inspector would make me rewire that. So that's why I created the rubric. You can do this in any program out there. Think about what you have your students do day in and day out, hands-on, and think about what you want them to do. What's the pinnacle of what you want, right? If a student's wiring something, don't we want the correct wire type? What if they use the wrong size wire? Well, we're going to have a fire on our hands, okay? So that's important. You're making a souffle. I don't know much about cooking. My daughter's great at it, but I don't know. So aren't there certain ingredients that have to be used? Doesn't it have to go at a certain temperature? Doesn't it need to do this and do that? So those are the types of things that you would put into a rubric. And then if you notice at the top, all of my tasks, all the evals, you start out with an A, 100 points. If you forget to fill something out on the front, you lose the points. Usually a point for each thing. And then what if it wasn't done to the industry standard? It was fair, 2 points off. What if it was poor? 5 points off. And so their grade goes down depending upon how many mistakes they make and what the level of performance was. All right, which is fair. Because, you know, most grading systems are looking for a numerical grade. That's what we need. Now down here, I have a redo task, yes or no. It could be that they may have done everything great, but there was one critical thing they really didn't get, and I want to make sure they do it again. So they do get it the next time. I'll circle that, and then I'll put in the comments what I think you need to do. I have a little trainer. It's like a small little model that I have the students use alligator clips to reset the circuits, because everything they do in my program is actually out in a shop in almost like a house mock-up. There's no drywall, but there's walls, they drill holes, they pull wire, because our program, along with carpentry, builds a house every 3 years, a 2,200 square foot house. Really nice houses. And the students need to know what they're doing in a house situation, not in a lab situation. So I have the circuit trainer on here. I give them multiple chances to try that, because every time they try that, they learn. They're mentally remapping that circuit in their head. It really, really helps them to remember it. Okay, so we go beyond that. What just happened? Sorry about that. That's weird. Everything just locked right up. That was strange. Okay, sorry. Hopefully this will change now. All right, there we go. My next thing at the bottom of my emails is, I struggled with this, and my director had also mentioned that, you know, we need to start incorporating a skill competency, right? Now, it's great to give somebody a 93, but like I said before, even though they did the task flawlessly, if they still needed help, they weren't truly proficient at it. So I kind of took, we as a school worked on these 3 levels, advanced, proficient, and basic. Tried to come up with a more rounded, broad definition so that we could use that across many different areas. And I kind of tweaked it a little bit, but in advance, the student was able to complete the task without any assistance from the instructor. That's huge, right? Because in the real world, when they go to work for somebody, the boss doesn't want the worker coming to them all the time asking them for help. He's paying them to get a job done, not for him to have to babysit them. So that's huge. That's huge. And it's right at the bottom of the evaluation sheets. When you flip them over on the back, I'm sorry to show you where they're at. So if it's a little hard to read, you can actually see it. They're right at the bottom. So they've got to do it without any help. Proficient, occasional assistance, right? And then basic, the student was able to complete the task with continued assistance from the instructor. So those are the big things. Assistance, a lot of assistance, a little assistance, all by themselves. Okay? But the other issue is they're able to do, in advance, they're able to do evaluate information from multiple sources in order to solve the related problem. And they get further up in my program, they don't get those instruction sheets anymore. And it's funny to watch them when they go back and find them again, or they get online and they pull on there, Mr. Reinhardt, there's nothing in there for number 14. And I'm like, that's because I didn't make anything for 14. I'm like, you guys are at a level now where you should be able to figure it out on your own. I said, look in the electrical book, find out the diagrams, create your own cable diagram, write it down, and now you start figuring out in your head what you need, how you're going to put it together. Because in the real world, when your boss rolls out a set of house plans and he says, okay, we'll go wire up the kitchen, he's not going to give you a list of instructions on how to do it. That's your job. So again, if you can take any of this type of information and format it to your program area, okay? And the big thing, well, this was the instruction sheet, which I already had you look at. So cable diagrams is what they need to know. That's what they're going to see on the blueprint. Wiring diagram was just my way of helping them to understand where the wires went and how they connected. I saw students struggle the first couple of years I was in there, and I thought, no, I'm going to try to help them in the early stages to put it all together mentally. A lot of my students are visual learners, and that's why I started coming up with that. And then on the back, it is literally everything they need, all the safety, and every step. I mean, I broke it down. My field resource associate from Temple always said, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Everything you do that you're so used to doing because you're a professional, they aren't going to remember all those little steps. You've got to list everything. So I did. I listed out every little tiny detail. Now, does the student still need help with this? Yeah, they do. But after they've done it a few times, they're into like task 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They don't even come to me anymore. It's a routine. It's in here. They look at that cable diagram, boom, they're gone. They're working. Now, I still hold back the reins a little bit. In the instructions, I'll tell them that they've got to go watch a video or they've got to go fill out a worksheet because there's something I want them to know that they haven't gotten yet. And they don't like that, usually. They just want to go to the shop. But they realize it's for their own benefit now. Students that are in their third year, sometimes their second year with me, they realize, I need to check out the worksheet. I need to go watch that video because it's going to show me what I'm going to do. And then I won't have to keep asking Mr. Reinhardt for help. That means I'm going to be advanced because they can figure it out on their own. See, they learn the process. They know what they need to do to get advanced because that's what's going to get them a good job when they graduate. Okay, so how do I track all this craziness? Well, it's big. I have an Excel workbook that I created years ago. I don't have a handout for you on this. I mean, if you want to see it or what have you, I can send you screenshots. I can, give you email. You give me an email address, I'll get it to you. But I'm going to hit it again, and we're going to blow it up a little bit. So this is my electrical. Here's every single one of the tasks listed. And if you notice right here, there's POS numbers, right? Programs of study. So I put down every POS number that's involved in that project. Okay? Now, with Excel workbooks, they have these little things called formulas. And on another sheet, there's a student that has their POS, right, with all the competencies on it. And I wrote a formula. And it says that for student number 8, when a date goes in here, you automatically populate the POS with every single one of those competency numbers that date. And that's how it works. So the one that I showed you with the 3 dates, it's tied to this workbook. And when I put a date in here, that they completed it on 11/24/14, automatically, all those PS numbers show that date. Works pretty well. I put every one of these in the back of my classroom and the students see the dates. When they hand me an eval, the next day they come in, they're right back there going, is the date on it? And then there's times when I'm too busy or I've got homework because I'm still taking college courses. But Mr. Reinhardt, number 14 is not on here. I'm like, yeah, you just turned it in at the end of the day yesterday. Cut me a break. So usually I try to get it on within 24 hours, but they're excited about it. They like to see their progress. They love it. Now, there are 6 of these in my room in the back on the wall, one for each section of the program. If a student in their first year, I try to keep them together in a group because it's easier. There's specific instruction they need to know in order to do things. But second, third, possibly fourth year, they're on their own. So they take a look at this. They see where they're at. You can tell what students like what in the program because if they love electrical, they're all over this thing. And there's dates all the way out there. And if they hate plumbing, they're like 3 or 4. It's just the bare minimum of the first year, maybe 10. But I tell them, listen, you're doing great in electrical, that's awesome. But we really need to keep you balanced. So I don't want you getting toward your senior year and struggling because you got all this plumbing you didn't do. So I try to keep them up there. It's about 4 or 5 years in that I noticed this trend. You could see what students really liked, what they didn't like. And I thought, there's got to be a way to keep them balanced so I don't have to constantly monitor them. Okay? And that's when I came up with a program guide chart. Yeah. So every one of the competencies, or I'm sorry, every one of the projects that I created to help them complete the competencies, I put on this. Now, I have adult students in my program. These are students that have already graduated from my program or some other program, or they just want to learn something to get a better job. They're paying to come in. They want to learn, and they want to learn everything they possibly can. So that's why in 1 year, I have everything I've ever created on here. Okay? And it's a lot. One time in my 11 years, I had a student who was a homeschool student. He'd show up at 8 in the morning. He'd leave around 3, sometimes a little earlier. We had a bathroom meeting. He completed everything in this 1 year. He was there all day with me. The only student to ever do it. He was phenomenal. He got done with this thing and had 3 or 4 weeks left of school. He was driving me crazy. He wanted things to do. I'm like, okay, I'll create more curriculum. We took the entire electrical mock-up and we turned it into a living room. I mean, a house. It was a bathroom, a living room. It was crazy. But again, all of this creates so much intrinsic motivation, internal motivation to a student. They see their accomplishments. I'm not harping on them to do things. They want to go. They're like, oh man, look, I can do carpentry. Oh yeah, when I'm done with this, I get to go do this. And they're there. Now, granted, the negative part happens once in a while too, where they're like, I don't want to get on the roof. I don't want to work on the roof mock-up. And they'll jump. And I'll see the eval come to me with the rope. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened at 13? Why'd you jump? I don't want to do that. I said, okay, you finished it. You did a good job. But now, before I let you go on, you got to get that done. I said, I'll help you, I'll work with you, that's what I'm here for. And it's amazing how it builds their confidence when there's something they see on there that they're just not really comfortable with, and then I help them get through it. And then they realize, I can do this, I can do this. That's what I love about the fact of tracking the students, letting them see where they are, and then giving them something that allows them to shoot for the clouds, go for the stars. So there are minimum requirements to all of this, and then there's the stuff that I created above and beyond the POS. Because I remember one of you two gentlemen actually saying that the POS was the minimum requirement for a program. So when a student looks at the POS, they get into like the number stop, and then it goes SP, which is special. So it's a special test. It's something above and beyond the POS. And we have them on the list. That list that gets generated when they're a senior, that has all their dates on it, shows how many times they did each competency because we're tracking all of that. They get a copy of that when they graduate. And I scan every one of the students' evals, every one of these. I scan them in at the end of the year. Put them on the copier, hit the button, shuts them all in, makes a PDF. And then I give it to them on a flash drive. Usually sometimes they say, hey, can you email it to me? I'll put it in my Google Drive. But they have that for the rest of their lives. When they walk into a business interview or a job interview, they can hand them the packet that shows all of the things they learned and the dates they completed it, how many times they completed it, and if they really want to, they can show them every single test, along with my comments on the back that said they did a great job or maybe they needed a little more help. Or usually by the time they've done these a few times, there's all kinds of good things on it. They're getting hundreds, getting 99s, 98s, and I'm marking it advanced proficient because they're doing it on their own. The amazing thing is when a senior is done with all the required parts of the program, usually by the end of their junior year, maybe the first marking period of their senior year, they're coming back to me going, hey, can I redo this one? Can I redo that one? Well, I'm like, take a look at the tracking sheet. What were you? Were you proficient or advanced proficient? Oh, I only got proficient because I'd only done that once before, or twice before. I said, well, then go ahead, get advanced. I want you guys to advance on that. That's the amazing thing about this. It really motivates the students. And it makes it a whole lot easier for me at the end of the year when they're senior, because I don't have to sit down and try to figure out what they were, and when they did it. It's all automatic. I just push a button. Well, I shouldn't say just push a button. I go through and check everything to make sure. Because formulas are crazy sometimes. But still, for the most part, it gives me a perfect representation of what they did and when they did it and how well they did it. And that's really what's awesome. Yes?
Yeah, the neat thing is your director can take a look at this.
Yeah, I would love to get this out on our network, but our network guy has not really been comfy with Excel because there's macros and things involved in it. But all she has to do is say, hey, can we take a look or she can walk right in the classroom and it's right in the back of the classroom and look at it there. It doesn't take much to print it out. Ultimately, this next semester I'll be done with Temple, and then my goal is to turn this into something on HTML, some type of web document that you can just click it and build it. You can build your own. Build your own evals, build your own program sheets. You put in the information, I give you blank fields, you click on that, you enter it, and it automatically creates this. I mean, I'm not a software engineer, I wish I was, because I see a huge need, and I've created something that'll fill it. I just don't know how to format it so everybody could use it in any program out there in the state or beyond. So anybody who's in computer programming, you know how to do this? Talk to me. I'll give it to you and let you just run with it. Because I would love to just see it go out there. I really would. Al. Yes, Dr. Hicks.
Just a question or just a comment too. One of the things about what advanced and proficient and basic means, when we have our occupational advisory committees, employers were saying to me, Dr. Davis, we hear proficient, but what does it mean to us in the real world? Like ABC doesn't mean much to us, nor does these words mean a lot to us. So can you define them? So that's why when we worked on it, and employers love it because they said in their mind when they're looking to hire somebody, they know what advanced means, proficient means and stuff. I don't know, is there a way to take a picture of the house that they built there to put up on the list? For the students.
I don't know if I have one on my slide.
The house or the employers are looking at it?
Yeah, not this one. Oh, on the website?
Yeah. And the students now know this too. You know when they come into the program, we talk about high tech and and do that. The employers and the students and the parents even like that, or when you're talking to the new board members that are coming on, and I always say, you know, we're not just a line item, you know, here's what we do, here's like the industry certifications, but the intensity, and again, you know, sometimes they have this in their mind that a carpenter is just a nail and a hammer, you got some boards, you know, put a birdhouse together, you tear it apart kind of thing. And those days are completely gone or whatever. So it works as a really good marketing tool too, to say to people, you know, here's what they can do, and it works for everybody, gifted, special ed, and everybody in between. Because it's a real good evaluation tool to be able to see what they need to do. And as an administrator, when I go in, I don't want to see anybody not actively engaged. That's part of my evaluation. So they need to see that. So that's a real good. So, yeah. That's okay. If you could see the house.
Yeah, just get
There we go, I get connected. I was connected earlier, I didn't realize it kicked me off. I thought I was still
Just a
connected.
picture, you know, of the house that is.
Yeah, I don't have one of the current, like, where it's at. I have some from previous projects, but if you want the current house.
Yeah, it's just, we had a realtor just look at it, and she said it's gonna be in the $300,000 range.
Okay.
Our last one we sold within less than a month's time.
Bruce, do you know exactly where, or, oh, it's Gary, what's sitting right here?
So that's okay if you can't, you know.
No, I'm sure. Go to programs, okay. Carpentry, or does he have the house project?
Might be on.
Let's see.
There it is.
There, I see a picture.
There.
Oh, and it moved.
There's Mike Rowe, we got to see Mike Rowe.
Go one more time. You know, it's because I'm in the, this, I'm hooked to the thing and my screen's wider, so programs. Do you know if it's in yours? You think he has it in yours?
Go ahead.
And then, that's actually the video of those guys on top of it. I wish Gary was here, it'd be easier.
No, that's not it.
Yeah.
That's okay. Like I
Sorry
said,
about
it
that.
just-
Yeah, I don't see where he's got the,
So there's rolling pictures
on the main page, yeah. So I thought, I could probably try to freeze it if I can scroll down
We have girls in our carpentry shop.
Yeah.
it. There's one of my students doing brick and mortar, one of the girls. I thought if I clicked on the picture when it came by, maybe it would take me to the something, but I don't know if it's out that way.
So anyway,
There
if
it is.
anybody wants to buy a house.
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
acres, a little over 2 acres, great school district, and you have to have 4 children or more because of enrollment numbers. We're working on it. So it's a we don't need
Oh,
to
yeah.
see transcripts or anything, but just at least 4 children or more.
I wanted to go to the end, then I just messed it all up. Well, anyways, at the end here, I basically I said, now it's your turn. And I wanted us to talk about how you see this working in your program. If you had questions for me, any accountability type stuff. I mean, I could go back through and talk about other slides. I threw a lot at you. There's got to be something that you have a question on. Yes, sir.
I see how you're tracking on your spreadsheet the date that they did, and that's repopulating for each of the students.
Right.
How are you tracking their level? So that when you look at that final sheet, how do you know, even though the student might have done it 3 or 4 times, how do you know that they're advanced or proficient?
There, right here. In the spreadsheet, this is the copy that the students get. Okay? Basically, I just tweaked the state's POS, and I added first day completed, second day completed, third day completed. Now, what happens is, let's say they do it 7 times. It'll show the latest 3 in there. And then the proficiency level right here is automatically placed there. Okay? So what I do is when I take that task evaluation sheet and I go to the back of the room and I mark down the date, depending on the color of ink I put it in, depends what proficiency level it was. Then at the end of the marking period, when I sit down on my computer, I lay my ruler across there and I start punching in dates, I hit the button for what it is. And it calculates it. Now I wish I had some way, magically, that it would automatically do that step. Because I've already have it set up where instructor's initials, and then there's also, in here, there'll be N for not instructed. When it changes from an N, when the date goes in there, it changes from an N to whatever level I put, and it automatically puts my initials there. So I don't have, at the end of the year, have to go down and put my initials in 200 some odd spaces. So I'm trying to automate it, but again, I'm not a computer science major, I don't do programming. I would love to find somebody who sees this and goes, oh yeah, give me a couple days, I'll have that done for you. It may take longer. But
Yeah, you've made that comment a couple of times now, and I've been teaching for 19 years, and I have the same issue. You're doing it in Microsoft Excel, I use a Microsoft Access database that I created, and since our PDE guys are here, maybe we can put them on the spot. Is there any way PDE can organize some kind of?
No, we don't have staff, we don't have time.
Because,
Sorry.
I mean,
I'm not gonna promise you something, but,
oh, I know, I know.
Yeah,
But there's so many teachers across the state that are doing similar things, and it's all good.
we all have great ideas.
Yeah, it is.
But there's no software tool for us to use to do what we need to do.
Well, I'm hoping in the next year or so,
Yeah,
I can
it's-
get this to market. Or not even to market, just get it out there so everybody can start using it, building it, creating, their own programs and stuff. Because we all do things that are above and beyond what the POS says. So we might as well get them in there, right? The key thing I want everybody to take away from this is this one thing right here. Come on, turn performance into proof, okay? That's key, because I've talked to a lot of teachers, and a lot of them, maybe not now, but years ago when POS first came out, they were just putting a check mark on there, or an X, or maybe they were doing a date, one date. They weren't following the student, they weren't helping the student, track themselves and motivate themselves. So by creating some form of a document for all of your hands-on things that they do, no matter what program you're in, it doesn't have to be this elaborate. I didn't come up with this overnight. This is probably my 10th or 11th generation. Every year I seem to tweak one or two things on it. It was last year, I think? I believe so. It was last year when we did the advanced, proficient, basic, and we finally came up with the term that we really wanted. That's when I added that. That was a revision. And the students at first were like, hey, what's this down here? And then I made posters and put them up so they could see. It was like a big bullseye with arrow and different targets. And what do those three terms mean? And once they got a handle of it, they saw it, I had it in the shop, I had it in the classroom, it started to sink in. And then I started to notice them taking more and more time, making sure they were doing things a little more diligently, make sure things were right, because they all wanted to hit that advanced proficient. You'd be surprised how upset they get because they're watching me grade these out in the shop. When they're done with the project, they hand me the eval, and they're like, come over here to the table, Mr. Howard, and give me the grade. How did I do? And when they see me mark proficient, they're like, what? This is the second time I've done that, even I'm not advanced. I'm like, well, do you remember back when? I saw you talking to so-and-so, and they came over and they did this, this, and this. Oh, yeah, that's right, I was stumped, and I did ask them because I didn't want you to know I needed help. And I said, it's not like I'm trying to keep you down. I'm doing just the opposite, I'm trying to lift you up. So when you do this again next year, guess what? You're going to make sure you figure it out on your own. You're not going to go asking anybody for help. So that's all I'm trying to do is just motivate these guys to be the best they can be. And girls, I should say, because this is the only year in my 11 years I haven't had a girl in my program, which is frustrating. Because the girls really make the guys work hard. It's awesome. Because the girls have really great attention to detail, I have to say. And it does, it motivates the guys to step up and really get on their A game. So it works really well. Okay. And we're at 1:30, so I don't know what time do I have to get up for everybody?
15 more minutes.
Oh, we do have time?
Sure.
All right.
Your task evaluation form,
Mm-hmm.
on the back,
Yep.
this is just covering every task that you cover in electrical,
Well,
because obviously you wouldn't.
yeah. You know what I'm going to do? Because I think we're done with the PowerPoint part. Let me go and pull up some for you.
And that's why I was wondering, when the kids are working in electrical, they'll use the same.
Yes, they use that same eval for everything we do in electrical. That's why you see service entrance on there.
Right.
Because I have an actual mock-up for the meter base and the breaker box and the mast and, yes, sir.
What about the other programs in your school?
The other programs in my school, I can't speak for too many of the teachers. I know I'm a little over the top. Seems like I don't sleep much at night. And I'm always trying to create this. But I know healthcare does some special tracking stuff. Can't speak for Mr. Castelli, our carpentry guy. I know he's always got guys doing special projects, so I'm sure at some point, one way or another, he's keeping track of what they do. But it's just tough to create something so huge, you know, that's so immense to track everything. So we each do it our own way. Now, we use Guides for Learning, and that's something that Dr. Perna has been working on with all of us to create this. He has a web-based form of it, and you have to do a little more manual computation with it. Usually the date you put in is the day you're doing it, where you know, somebody may not be able to sit down for a whole marking period and then they put them in like I do. It's hard to go back and put the actual date in, but I know he's working on that. Whereas with this Excel spreadsheet, whatever date I key in is what stays there, you know, which is nice. So let me show you to answer a few questions. Let me get down here. I have way too much on this flash drive, but I use everything. So electrical. Let's see. No, I didn't want to. Yeah, I did. Shot test. So eval. Bear with my computer, it's 11 years old, it's time for a new one. It's pretty slow. It takes a while for it to open things up. But hopefully I'll be able to show you a little bit closer what I did. Okay, so this is the whole ball of wax here. Let's zoom in a little bit. So they fill all of this out with everything they use, everything they do, what they thought, you know, what they learned. Then we get down here, and this is the project evaluation.
No, you're doing the evaluation.
Yes,
correct?
yes, I'm the instructor. But the nice thing, the reason I put this on the eval was so the students knew what I was grading them on. I mean, because in essence, when I'm out in the shop, I tell them, look at me as the code enforcement officer. You just spent a lot of time and money building something, and now I'm coming in here and it's my job to make sure you did it right, and I'm going to tear you apart if it's not. Now, I don't tear them apart, but I want them to have that mental thought that there's someone out there that's going to critique their work. And it's not going to be just, oh, I got a bad grade or I got a few more red marks on my eval. It's going to be, you got to do that over again because it's not right. So I want to get that instilled in them. So, yeah, service entrance, service panel. Usually what I do, see this little column right here says NA. If they didn't work in that area, just put a little red check mark there. That's all. I mean, I could pull up some that have already been filled out, but they've got student end names on them, and I don't have any whited out for this. I wasn't thinking that far ahead to give you examples. But typically, this left side always gets filled out. Always the type of electrical boxes, the general appearance, the cable used, did they terminate them correctly, were they connected correctly? Let me show you where'd the rest of my folder go. Oh, it's in here. Too much open, I guess. There we go. I have plumbing, I have so many different things I can show you. I'm going to go to, let's do, I'll come up with I think I have a special, I'm trying to remember where I put the special. Probably in shared info. Yep, there it is, special task eval. My program, we're like the fix-it shop of the school, basically, because we do so many different things. We'll get, someone will call us and say, hey, you know, I got this, it's broken, can you come take a look at it? Or, oh, I want this built, can you guys, you know, put it on your job list of things to do? Once Dr. Davis approves it, then we go out and we actually do the build. Like, we're building a soundproof room around the compressor and small engine, and we built classrooms in areas, and we've done all kinds of stuff. But the students, in order for me, I'm a firm believer of everything they do should get a grade. If they're working, we should be assessing them in one way or another for it. So, my grade book is huge. I mean, I've been told it's got more grades in it than anybody else's, but I don't know that now. That was years ago. But everything they do gets it. So, whenever they do something, I want them to draw for me. I don't have a lot of artists, but you'd be surprised how well they actually do when they put their mind to it. Take a few minutes and start drawing things out. I'll tell them, go back in the cabinet, pull out an exploded view of the faucet, trace it. I don't care, trace it. Now label it. What did I just do? I made them think about what each one of those parts is called. And because they had to write it, helps them remember it. So I have a method to my madness, even though sometimes I make them a little crazy. Now, total materials used. This they love. Up here, all the little pieces they cut and use, they list. And down here, they got to add them all up. Math. It made you guys add fractions. So that's what that's always for. And then any supplies used. Because I want them to think, okay, they fixed something. What supply did you use? Did you use caulk? Did you use Teflon tape? Did you use screws? Because out in the real world, who pays for that box of screws? You just used half a box to build something. Did you forget about that step? So you try to get them to remember those kinds of things. And then I have them write out all the tools that they use to complete the task. And this rubric on the back is very, very simple. The one thing you will notice is there's a lot more room for writing. Well, if it's not a set task that I had worksheets for, I want them to tell me everything they did, all the critical thinking that they had, how they decide to build it this way or build it that way, because that's how the learning it happens. And I want them to tell me all the steps. So that's predominantly how I get them to think. I mean, it's this almost the whole back of this is writing. And if they want 100, they're going to fill it in. I tell them that. You get graded on what you give them. So, and I have students that are doing a phenomenal job. And then this is the only rubric for the piece. But when you look at what's on there, neat and workmanlike appearance, well, isn't that important? I mean, who are you going to hire? If they're going to come and do a sloppy job, you're not going to hire them again. And then, was the material laid out correctly? Was it the right dimensions? Project procedure, did you follow any procedures? Did you use the right amount of materials, the right amount of fasteners? Over here in maintenance, if they're going to repair something, they cleaned and lubricated it properly. Did they adjust the manufacturer's specs? Did they repair the manufacturer's specs? How about safety? Safety's on every one of them. And then workmanship standards. Show me appropriate work progress. Did it take you a week? Did it take you 3 months? How long did it take? Do you think that you worked fast enough? Were there a few days in there where you dilly-dally? Maybe you were talking, you weren't really working, you weren't really on task. So I take some serious points off for that. For safety and for workmanship, I'll take 5 and 10 points off. So they'll go from an A to a B real quick if I catch them. Yes?
I always have trouble with rubrics because of defining it. Like, do students know what fair and poor is?
They do in my shop, because in the beginning of the year, we go over all of that. And I have, when you look at my...
So for each step, you define, okay, so this is what poor would look like,
Mhm.
this is what fair looks like,
Yep.
and this is when you're going to get.
Yeah, every time in the beginning of the year, I go over these with them. And then when we get into an area, say plumbing, and we're talking about sweating copper together, they know what advanced looks like, what meets standards, right? Completed to industry standards, they know what that looks like. And then I show them what fair is, and I show them what poor is. So they get a pretty good idea of what to do and what not to do. Plus, all of these standards, all these things I have, all of this, it's in the shop in the classroom. There's paper and pictures everywhere in my classroom. Yeah.
You said you're on the student tracking progress paper.
Mm-hmm.
You were going to tell the group how you imported those POS competency numbers.
Yeah, I'll show you. That was the next place I was going. I was going to
Okay.
actually
How do you achieve that with the different numbers from the list?
Well, let's put it this way. It took months of me sitting down, looking through every single project, trying to come up with every competency that was in each project.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just me. The other teacher that was in my program, he and I got to a point where I thought I knew what I needed to know. And I said, hey, can you come take a look at it? And then he would, come in and he's under competencies, workbook. There's only one problem. I've got student names. Well, when it opens, I'll slide it over because I don't want to. But I can show you, hopefully. This view is very narrow and the workbook is very large, so this may be a little difficult.
Maybe they just want that one.
Well, it's not, yeah, they could. I can show you that too. Any other questions while I'm messing around with this? Am I tickling anybody's ideas? Yeah.
I'm a welding instructor. I have to teach you that soft copper solder.
Mhm.
I have to teach that in my course. I don't know if you do what I'm going to ask you or not.
Well,
What I do is
see
I
that right
actually
there?
allow the kids
It's all welding.
to cut that in half and saw so that they can actually look at the internal portion to see how that capillary action actually took place to pull the solder and fitting. You do that?
Yes, I do. Well, the way I do it is I have them take the project and use the pipe cutter and cut all the good copper that's in between the fittings and recycle that, because we'll use that in another project. Then I have them put it in the vise. I've got tables in my room with vices on every corner. Lightly put it in the vise, take a hacksaw, cut it. Flip it over, cut the other piece, pop it apart. Now let's look at it. Did it flow all the way on the inside and on the outside? I teach them heat on top, solder on the bottom, because solder flows the heat. And you should see their eyes light up when they actually see that solder come right up to the top, and then it flutters. And they're like, yeah! Because they know right away they got it perfect, as soon as they see that. So it's those little things as an instructor, you know, when you teach them and they see it, that the light bulb goes on and then
We
they're
do
gonna do
that
it
with
that
the
way.
soft solder and
Yep.
15% silver.
Yeah, yeah, brazing, we don't really have to do it, but I know in our skills competition, last year it was required, so that's something that I'm making sure I'm doing when I'm home, showing how to use the, you know, braze copper. Okay, so this, let me try to shrink this down real quick a little bit and slide it over. Bear with me here. I'll try to show you the whole workbook. I'm just gonna keep the names out of the way so that you're not seeing them. I know it's not gonna work, it's gonna be too small. All right, let's do something better here. Down at the bottom, you can see my workbook here, required electrical. Well, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything too terribly there. So you can't see all the dates because I have it shrunken down, but basically everything's right here. This is where I put my data in, okay? And I have it for specialized plumbing. That's the advanced stuff. That's the stuff that a lot of students don't get to. Only those students that are really motivated, because it's the stuff I create for the adults. And I have required machine, all these different areas. Now, when I go out here, if I click this, I believe that gets me there. All right, see this number 8? I see you are going to see the students thing. Well, that's okay. I'll leave Jane on mine. There's not much in there. It's not like their grades or anything. So I have my levels, comes down here. This, because of where we're at right now and not in the finalized portion, I don't have advanced proficient basic populated, okay? So, and you notice this is only my single version. When I export for a senior, that's when I get all the additional information. I haven't, this is a work in progress. I don't have all the formulas there yet. But what I'll show you is, I created a formula, and if I go into this box because it's populated, see it says at the top, if safety, G8. There's my formula. So it's going back to the safety sheet right here, all right? And it's looking to see if there's a date there, that he cut the compound angles of the miter cell. All right, when I put that date in, boom, it populates it there. Now it also populates at other places. So if we go to safety, and I go like this, and I go to compound miter cell. Okay, let's see if I can blow up on that a little better. Okay. So you see 203, 901, 902, 904, 905, 907. We go back to that student's book, right? And we are in 700, right? So all of those. And they all have the same date because they're all part of that instructional. Okay? Now he had to do a worksheet, right? I had 2 formative assessments. And then he went out in the shop, he demonstrated for me, that's one formative. The worksheet, there's an assessment that I make him do. There's a smart response that I do. I'm a little electronically nuts, because I think the more they see it, the more they do it, the better they are at it. So, then they actually go out in the shop and they demonstrate to me. Now my test, that one-line assessment that I do for the compound miter cells, got 84 questions.
Wow.
Yeah. The one that the state had out there had like 10 or 12 on it. And then I had
Is
students.
that good? I don't know.
No. I mean, 84, yeah, because I reiterate almost every one of those questions in a different format 3 times. Because I want to know that they know it. Because when students ask me, I'm like, well, you don't want a 95%, do you? Right? You don't want to lose a tip of a finger because you got a 95 on a test. Especially safety, I require them to get 100. Now that I've revamped the tests, and I'm really asking them a lot of questions, I let them squeak by with a 95. As long as none of the ones they got wrong were the safety procedures, like safety glasses, tie back your hair, you know, that kind of stuff. So, and they're great with it. They love it. And I mean, it's up to you. We're just about out of time. So, did I answer your questions with how I import the data, basically the date? So the tough part is, like, there was a 901 in there, right? I think there was a 901, 907. You'll see that is perform tool machine maintenance. So they have to know how to do some maintenance to that too. So that's part of it. Okay? Not just safety, but cleaning it, maintaining it, and that also fulfills, it's not positive. So hopefully next year or so, too, maybe I'll have found somebody who can help me get this out there to everybody so you can start using it or building it. Okay? Yes, sir.
You have contact information in case?
Yes, I do. I have a bunch of business cards up here. If you want, I can give you some. And you can shoot me an email with your questions, and I'll try to help you out with whatever I can.
Okay, thank you very much.